All right, should we talk about the anti-vax video? So this was the video I released here. We should feel sorry for anti-vax people. And I guess this is the kind of the sequel to this video. See, this is what my expectation was about this video. I expected my point of view to be pretty benign. I thought I was being like really impartial. I thought I was being a complete super centrist here. I was like, don't diss anti-vax people. Don't call them stupid. Understand their opinions, talk to them, listen to them, and understand they're normal human beings. I thought my position there was so unbelievably neutral. Then I scrolled down and read the comments. Oh my god, the comments. Oh my goodness. Strong words from the guy who claims he's disabled because he gets tired sometimes. That's a beautiful straw man of what my disability video was about, dude. Thank you. It is depressing to think that some people believe pharmaceutical companies and politicians who have handed our countries to the third world for 70 years. We've handed pharmaceutical companies, politicians, have handed our countries to the third world for 70 years. Have our best interests in mind. I don't even know where to begin with some of these comments. You know, how do I even reply to that? Where do I even come from? So he's presuming a conspiracy that pharmaceutical companies control the world and they've handed our country to the third world for 30 years. And I replied to him, dude, do you want to have a voice chat? Want to have a friendly chat? I'm being totally impartial here. I'm like, I want to hear your opinions as words. And of course, I replied to a load of these asking, can I have a voice chat with you? I really would like to tap your brain, just have a listen to you. I'm not going to take the piss out of you. I'm not going to try and dish you. I just want to understand your ideas and where they're coming from. And I'll admit, I sent a lot of these messages out asking people, can I just have a friendly conversation with you? I want to talk on my Discord about what you think and what your ideas are and just pick about your brain. And the vast majority say no, obviously. I had one guy who said he would speak to me, but then he went cold on the DMs. And I had a younger guy who was 16 who did speak to me. And he came at me so impartially. And he said to me, Dave, I just want to make choices, okay? I want to make smart choices. And I don't think that the vaccine for me is the right choice because he's 16. And do you know what, dude? If that was your argument, that you don't want the vaccine because you're young and you're less likely to die of COVID, that's great. That's fine. You made a decision based on your own free will. That's what you should do. And I celebrate that. I mean, there's nowhere in this video where I say, don't make choices. Don't think for yourself. There was nothing in the video that suggested that. But that seems to be the vaccine narrative. Like, oh, you're telling us what to do. You're pushing me into a corner and saying I've got to do X, Y, and Z. But that was definitely not how this video was positioned in any way, shape, and form. Well, anyway, if that was his point of view, I would have celebrated him. But it wasn't just that. Have you heard about the side effects of the vaccine? Women are going infertile. People are having enlarged hearts and dying. And I'm like, Oh, and he also suggested the story that I told in this video was made up. Like, his default setting was that I'm skeptical of your story. Like, I'm spreading pro-vaccine propaganda in this video because I talked about someone who got COVID and died. And he automatically presumed, because he was anti-vax or vax skeptical or whatever one you want to call it, that I was making up a fake story to spread pro-vax propaganda. To be honest, the conversation ended quite friendly because I don't want to be angry at him. I don't want to be upset with him. But I just said to him, it's like, dude, if your position and your point of view, your perspective and your point of view was just solely based on, I want to make smart choices, you would have had me there. And I'd be like, yeah, you got me there, dude. If you're making decisions and smart decisions based on you, that's totally fine. But then he had to throw in lots of stuff about how people's brains are exploding from COVID vaccines. Yeah. This is an interesting take because a lot of Americans are pretty strong free market people, where in Europe, people are kind of are quite open to government intervention, but Americans have a lot of skepticism about government intervention. So let's say us in Europe, we say to ourselves, oh, let's regulate this market of pharmaceuticals because they're becoming very powerful, very big, and they're lobbying governments quite heavily. So we'll have an independent regulator that will put checks and balances on certain pharmaceutical companies to make sure they don't get out of hand. This is a free market approach, okay? This is not anti-capitalist, by the way. This is a capitalist stance of wanting an independent free market regulator to look after this specific area of business. Americans would be against this, and Europeans would be for it. As you can notice, as things are currently are at the moment, medicine doesn't have this free reign over society like Americans do, where they have these massive pharmaceutical bids. Let's be real right now. Let's just be level with each other. If it wasn't for the massive lobbying of pharmaceutical companies and medicine in America, you guys would already have universal healthcare at this point. I want you guys to really think about that. Yeah, anyway, that was kind of interesting. Let's see if there's any other comments as well. This guy, I don't know, man. This topic is very complex, I think. I think it all depends on where you get your information, as well stated. I mean, this statement is very true. It depends on where you get your information from. If you've been told over and over again that anything that you hear from the mainstream media is fake and fake news, and then, for instance, you have this blog online that you read that tells you that vaccines cause your head to explode, I suppose that there might be a part of you that goes, well, I'm just thinking independently and my brain could explode. You know, I'm really concerned about that. As you well stated, but I think there's also a lot to do with contracting information when it comes to the same levels like CNN and Fox News. I mean, no one disagrees with that, but I think smart people, not just categorize people into smart and dumb, but I think if you're smart and you know what's going on, you can be able to find sources of information that are actually information directly from doctors that will tell you this information is true or fact, regardless of bias, regardless of sensationalism, regardless of what media source it's actually from. Like example, they tell you everyone how dangerous it is. Like, it's almost like it's an automatic death sentence if you catch it. Well, that's an exaggeration. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's not COVID. It isn't an automatic death sentence. Is it something like, what's the COVID chance of 0.2%? Isn't it? If you get COVID and die, that information's out there. He could have Googled that information. The chance of getting COVID and dying is 0.2%. But he's using a hyperbolic statement here by saying automatic death sentence. 0.2% is not an automatic death sentence. I believe some people are more impacted by fear than other people. And I feel like if you are that kind of person, you're really skeptical of things that are scary, maybe reading news from like sensational media like CNN and Fox News probably isn't right for you. But then remember, don't forget the alternative. The alternative to mainstream media is reading scientific journals, which most of us, including me, aren't qualified to do it. So a lot of the time, we use the mainstream media to give us the information. Then the doctors will translate that information inside of the articles. So therefore, we have actually accurate information that we can use in daily life. This idea that we can read scientific journals and understand them as a layman is a little bit of a radical take, you know what I mean? Like doing your own research and being able to read a scientific journal, it's a little bit different, you know what I mean? They both show people on breathing machines that are almost daily and constantly showing people how people have died from it. I mean, because we're at 2 million people who have died of COVID. How many people have died of COVID? 5.1 million. Jesus Christ. I honestly feel like if that number was 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, 100 million, there'd still be people out there saying, oh, but Dave, those numbers are exaggerated. Oh, Dave, it's not really a big deal. Oh, Dave, it's not really something we should care about. Listen, I'm not saying what you shouldn't and shouldn't care about, okay? But try and understand, you know, like if someone's saying something's a problem, maybe there's some merit to it. You know what I mean? That's really scary. A lot of people have had it, that's true. And some were asymptomatic, that's very true too. Only dangerous for people with underlying conditions and old people, to a certain degree. They said it in the beginning of the vaccine. I couldn't find any news articles from mainstream sources advising against face masks because that would actually make it likely to catch it because you would touch your face more frequently to correct it while you're touching because of a contradiction to your face. I mean, man. I thought the mask thing was a straight cut yes or no, but the more information I read about masks, people are getting a... I think the problem with masks is a doctor, like a surgeon, for instance, puts on a surgical mask and he follows the correct protocol. Have you ever seen a surgeon prep for surgery before? So this is like correct mask etiquette. This is not a layman. This is a medical professional prepping for surgery. Remember this. This is not a layman.
While an assistant is preparing the animal, the surgeon should prepare to carry out surgery.
This is a vet's.
Appropriate protective clothing
this will be okay. This will be okay.
To avoid contaminating the surgical site. Since operating areas should be kept warmer than animal holding rooms to help reduce the risk of animals becoming hypothermic during anesthesia, it may be more comfortable to change into a scrub suit. This will also avoid long-sleeve clothing becoming wet during hand washing. Wearing a head cover and mask is strongly recommended, but the most important step is to perform effective disinfection.
This is something you hear quite often, like a lot of germs, I guess potentially viruses and other harmful elements could get caught in jewelry. In this case, he takes off his watch.
Your hands by scrubbing up and then putting on a sterile gown and sterile surgical gloves. Having taken off any watches or jewelry, wash your hands with a disinfectant soap. Methodically work around each finger and down over your hands and forearms, and allow sufficient contact surface dirty outer.
Anyway, I thought that was just a good demonstration of correct mask wearing etiquette. And I do think for the most part, a lot of people who wear masks probably wear them wrong. And probably a lot of the data on masks is showing that people still get issues with them even when they wear them. Probably because a lot of people who wear them don't wear them very often. So they're constantly yanking at them, pulling them and moving them up and down, touching their nose and not touching their nose. Which when you're touching your face in those circumstances, you're not really taking advantage of the protection that a mask would give you. But as you can see, like with a surgeon, there's no touching of your face. Everyone's touching stuff for you. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, you know? Face masks, so he talks about face masks. Plus, people still remember from swine flu and the vaccine how people got ill from it. I can't recall anything about swine flu. Even though the government assured everybody it was completely safe, we will see side effects from the vaccine, but we don't talk about it. People are taught, the information about side effects of vaccines are well talked about. It's not information that's being pushed under the rug. It's something like 1 in every 1,000 suffers from that heart issue. Chance of side effect of COVID vaccine. I mean, what I'm doing right now, please don't interpret me as being condescending, but right now I'm Googling answers to these specific questions and doing your research. This is me doing my research right now to find out the answer to these questions. So don't try and interpret what I'm doing right now as being condescending when it comes down to finding the right information. All I'm doing is Googling this stuff and finding the answers to these questions. He's just basically said an inaccurate information. We see side effects from the vaccine, but we don't talk about it. Don't talk about it? That's unbelievably not true. They do talk about side effects of vaccines. Common side effects of COVID-19. Sore arm from injection, feeling tired, a headache, a feeling itchy, a feeling being very sick. We've got rare reactions such as allergic reactions, and there is a chance of blood clot. They usually stipulate like 1 in every 100. Oh, here we go. This is the one everyone was talking about and getting really scared about. Here we got heart inflammation, myocarditis, chest pain, shortness of breath, fast breathing, and shut-in pounding of the heart. It's basically an enlargement of the heart, basically inflammation of the heart. I wish they'd state the numbers on here, like the chance of how I believe it was 1 every 1,000, 1 every 10,000, something like that. It's incredibly rare. I think it should be talked about because, I mean, let's look at this for a second. I just Googled chance of a side effect of COVID vaccine results 2,360,000,000 results. This guy reckons we don't talk about it. 2.3 trillion. Billion, that's billion, sorry, billion. 2.3 billion. We don't talk about it. 2.3 billion. Can you understand the logic there, for instance? That those two things that he stated they don't add up. You know what I'm saying? I think it should be talked about because why not? We are talking about it. That's what we're talking about now. The alternative is that a lot of people think about the government is lying to them. Let's see if we can find some other posts as well about other people have posted about, because there was a bunch of others as well, but they were so toxic. I had to delete them, and I don't hesitate. Let me think about this for a second. I'm reluctant to delete people's comments, but I don't want my community to be like this secret underground nest of COVID deniers, you know? All right, here's another example of another one. So once again, I offered him an opportunity to talk on Discord about this, but he never did, surprisingly. Oh my God, guys, here's some hearsay and hearsay and hearsay of hearsay. So there's a jump to conclusions fallacy that is a masquerading as an opinion. God damn, you're getting new words here, teaching me. You got a good thing going, Feedback. Why even branch the subject and ask for poisoning in the well? So this is the idea that they feel like they're being censored by the information of anti-vax being publicly available. But he's accusing me of saying, shut up, you're poisoning the well by talking about a subject. To me, that seems contradictory. Like, simultaneously, when you openly talk about a subject that it doesn't want to get talked about, like it's being suppressed, for instance, that's free speech. But when I talk about the subject on the other side, that you shouldn't do that. No, don't do that. You're poisoning the well when you do that. Also, the level of ignorance you have displayed is significant. This statement never gets backed up. You're taking the position that you're certain that people are less intelligent. I never actually said that, because they look at information and come to a different conclusion. Didn't say that either. Fair enough, you don't like their conclusions, but you do absolutely nothing to dispute their logic and claims other than ad hominem attacks. If you're trying to voice an opinion and have an opinion, don't regurgitate some talking points that have melted into your brain. And at the end of the day, once again, you're talking to someone who Googles information quite frequently, not someone who just repeats headlines over and over again. At the end of the day, you should be in the world is in crisis of truth. Each pole of the argument reaches its own conclusions based on what it is considered. Once again, it's one of those please don't talk about things that I disagree with. It's upsetting me. The arguments reach loggerheads because they're unable to accept the fact as other people does. So maybe get off your high horse and have some compassion for humanity as a whole right now, and recognize that there is a crisis in the world and no amount of fallacies is going to help us out. Religion, politics, and money always cause people to take a position. It's not my channel. It's not my advice. But my advice, what it's worth, to steer clear of these things you care not to poison your community. Good luck if you love your content, your attitude for the most part. I just wanted to get a follow-up to my existing video, guys. I'm sorry if this is a bit boring and drooly, but I just wanted a follow-up to express some of the points and some of the things that people have said. Typical vax-tard. Uncritical shells everything the government. Uncritically swallows everything the government and the tech overlords feed him. don't understand the risks. Tech overlords. Wasn't it like Facebook, the main source of vaccine, anti-vax propaganda? Doesn't understand the risks. Go get an injection every 6 months to feel safe. Mix and match your experimental shots. I don't care. I'm in a control club of the giant experiment, watching what happens to you. And once again, I offered to talk to him on voice chat, and he turned me down. It's kind of hard to make sense of what a lot of the stuff he's saying. Apparently, the new information that's come out that say that the vaccines, after about 6 months, start to lose some of their potency. Here's a twist, guys. They all do. Polio vaccine, it loses its potency over time as well. Cholera, mumps, they all do. This is how vaccines work. They don't have this idea that you have to take a vaccine and you're permanently immune for the rest of life for a certain disease. It is a myth. This is the way vaccines work. They're not permanent. And the way it works at the minute, the reason people are constantly getting shots every 6 months and boosters, we eradicate COVID completely. So therefore, there won't be new variants. Therefore, we won't have to worry about it forever. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great to live in a world where we don't have to social distance? Wouldn't it be great in a world that we don't have to wear masks under any circumstances? Wouldn't it be great to not get shot every 6 months? Well, if we do that and we put up with a shot every 6 months, that means that COVID will be eradicated. There'll not be any more variants, and then we'll be gone for good, and we can move on with the world. The reason why smallpox is eradicated is through vaccines. The reason you don't ever meet anyone or see anyone or hear about anyone who's got smallpox is because vaccines eradicated it. Which is actually what we want to do with COVID. I understand that you have a strong emotion concerning the death of a friend. I have not taken the COVID jab, but does that mean that I am not an anti-vaxxer? I have made a weighted decision to myself concerning the new vaccine. Everything so far is logical. As a 28-year-old, statistically, I have a better chance to die from complications stemming from the vaccine from COVID. Wow, so not true. The vaccine is not only experimental, they're utilizing a complete new technique of the vaccine. This technique's been around since the noughties. This is not a new technique. It's been around for at least 15 years. Once again, how do you define experimental? We're almost hitting 3 years worth of COVID vaccines now, so I don't know at what point he doesn't call them experimental anymore. I believe you should test them all through with using a new technique instead of hastening their introduction and happening here. Situation in the UK, the Netherlands have promised that Johnson & Johnson vaccine should be only blah, blah, blah. Booster shots. Have you ever in your life had any complications required from bi-yearly updates? Yeah, but you're using bi-yearly updates as if it's an experiment. But the lateral fact is COVID is happening right now. COVID is a problem happening right now. I think that's the big thing people can't get their brain around. The reason why we're having constant shots for COVID vaccinations is to eradicate it or make it practically non-existent among the general population. So therefore, it needs to be a medical condition that no one needs to worry about. Have you heard about the 14,000 cases of women who have since had jabs having problems with their menstrual cycle? Oh God, I had to Google this because I'll be honest with you, I'm not up on women's menstrual cycles, okay? So I had to Google this and look this one up. So apparently what he said is actually true. Yes, women who have had the COVID shots have had changes to their menstrual cycles. They've either had early periods or late periods, for instance. Get this, guys. This is completely normal. Inside of the vaccine is like an inflammatory element. It makes your immune system react to the foreign body. The reason why that's important, a part of a vaccine, is you need your immune system to come and attack this new element to make antibodies for it. So if they injected the part of the COVID vaccine to you without that inflammatory element, your body wouldn't necessarily react to it. It'd be a very small reaction. The downside to that, your body may not make enough antibodies to prepare for COVID in future, so it needs this inflammatory body part of the vaccine to have that reaction. But it turns out that when women have something like something as a cold, or for instance has, let's say, a period of anxiety or mental health, this can do the exact same thing again. It can cause their periods to be early or it can be late. Those elements can have an impact on that. And that is what that is. So it phrases it in a way, it sounds like infertility, but it's actually not. These kind of elements can have an impact on women's menstrual cycles. Please keep videos like this coming. There are enough people who can voice nuanced opinion like you do. Well, he kind of ends it, I suppose. He's a vaccine skeptic, which I applaud him for it because he's expressing his opinion, but he's also open-minded to the idea of new things. So I suppose that's kind of useful. Dave, people don't die from coronavirus unless they have underlying condition or are elderly. I doubt the credibility of your story. Oh, this is the guy I actually spoke to. This guy was a 16-year-old. Because he's a former friend of a friend. Dave, you got to say the evidence is from small niche blogs that can't be held to account by anyone. He's conflating two things, different things that I said in the video. So your story about the friend of a friend at the start of the video isn't held accountable by any one of these blogs to help you. So why you don't question your friend's story? Furthermore, if your story is true, there's elderly people who have underlying condition to consider a risk. I don't like this argument. Like this idea that, oh, it doesn't affect young people and it only affects people that don't have underlying conditions, and I'm neither of those things. God, this is such an awful attitude. Yeah, but you know someone who has an underlying condition. You know someone who is elderly. That potentially, if you get coronavirus, you can give it to them. You can kill them. And your attitude is, oh, I just don't care. I'm not having someone poke me with a vaccine. Oh, man, that attitude stinks. Dave, if you really felt sorry for the anti-vaxxers, you would try to sympathize with them. That's the whole point of the video. I said, don't feel sorry for them and try and just talk to them, have a conversation. That was the whole point of the video. Yes, and all those anecdotes are complete lies. He's basically just saying that everything I'm saying is a lie. You have molded them to fit your narrative and you have no concrete evidence. Once again, I'll just repeat what I said before. I personally thought the video was completely benign, and I didn't think it was. I thought I was taking a nice, easy centrist stance where I felt like, for the most part, it's important that we get vaccines if we can get vaccines, and if you choose to get the vaccine, please get it. And if you don't want to, just don't. But this simultaneous, I want to choose not to get it, but I'm going to list all these things I read online on Facebook or somewhere online of people dying or getting heart that explodes or women becoming infertile. It's just not being well researched. This doing your own homework requires you to actually do some homework, you know? Okay, I think we've killed this conversation. It is well and truly dead. Oh, Christ. I didn't want to do this because this is going to be a really controversial subject on my channel to begin with, but whatever. We got it out of the way anyway. I guess there might be a part 3 depending on how controversial some of the other opinions are. We'll get later on. More comments maybe, who knows?